fate was set in motion roughly 2,000 years ago, when the Astral Lucilius created assistants to aid his research into Sky Dweller evolution. They were the original primal beasts, though they went by a different name: Archangels. Given that we primals are immortal, the role which we are bestowed becomes our sole purpose for existing. Yet, when I was created, Supreme Primarch Lucifer saw fit to grant me nothing. I was essentially a blank slate, little more than the hollow husk of a primal. With unwavering determination, I stalked the garden of the Astral Research Lab, waiting for my chance to question Lucifer. What was my purpose in life? Only he had the answer I desperately sought. With each passing moment, the whirling tempest of inferiority and doubt within my mind grew fiercer. As my disillusionment deepened, I came to view the Supreme Primarch as my only salvation. His wisdom, his skill, and even his poise. Everything about him was sublime. It was only fitting that he was beloved by all. I was convinced there was no other being as perfect as him. Indeed, he was the light that illuminated the world. And thus, I endeavored to prove that I could be of use to him. The only way I could pull my weight was to secure a role for myself. It became an obsession. I was but a tender hatchling, pestering its parent for nourishment. If only I had been more careful of what I wished for. One day, I finally learned the truth of my purpose, and it destroyed me. I wouldn't go so far to say I was eavesdropping. More like, I happened to be within earshot of a conversation between Lucilius and Lucifer. From this innocuous meeting, my entire world changed forever. A spare. I was Lucifer's spare. A temporary stand-in for the Supreme Primarch, should circumstances go awry. However, when you're the definition of perfection like Lucifer, a spare becomes redundant. Not only was I born a backup, I was a useless one. My dreams were built on hope, respect, and admiration. Yet, it wasn't until everything came crashing down that I realized how flimsy that foundation had been. In one brief flash, I came to hate the light. Much time passed after that shocking revelation, though little of note occurred. Later, however, a faction of the Archangels rose up in rebellion against the Astrals. They were the fallen angels, primals who believed themselves to be at the top of the food chain, radicals who snapped at the hands of their creators. Their mission was to shake up the hierarchy. Lost in rage from being tossed aside like a broken doll, I joined the rebellion without hesitation. It was my chance to claim revenge on Lucifer and Lucilius. No, just Lucifer. But the revolt was quashed, and I, along with the fallen angels, was imprisoned in Pandemonium. I languished in that colossal cage for 2 millennia, an eternity, even for a being with all the time in the world. Yet, as chance would have it, when Vern and Lyria came in contact with each other for the first time, a deafening roar reverberated across the skies, signaling the opportunity for me to escape. Luck was on my side. But when I emerged back into the open skies, Lucifer was nowhere to be found. I wanted to be berated. I yearned to be scolded. But above all else, I needed acknowledgement. And I wouldn't rest until I got what I deserved. If I needed to light the world ablaze just to smoke him out, so be it. I destroyed the equilibrium between the tetra elements, fire, water, earth, and wind. Deprived of that delicate balance, the islands would lose buoyancy and crash into the crimson horizon below. My lips twisted into a grin as I watched the Primarch scramble to put out my fires. Wiping out the world wasn't even that hard. I had barely broken a sweat. I shed no tears for the ruin of the skies. My focus was exhausted, suffocated, by the stranglehold Lucifer kept on my heart. Darkness had conquered my judgment to the point where not even his light could mollify me. But that was what I wanted. What possessed me to commit such atrocities? Why did I lash out with such rancor? I asked rhetorically. I already knew the answers. I didn't care if I became a villain. All I cared about was proving my existence. Nothing was going to stop me. Come what may, I was going to force his hand. I chose to believe there was a method to my madness. To be punished for my crimes would validate my birth. Leaving behind a wake of destruction was my way of crying out for attention. No matter how foolish an act it was, nothing could have stopped me. There was only one way to soothe my tortured soul. All I needed was for one person to admit that I mattered, to tell me I belonged in this world. In the end, it was the captain and crew who thwarted my realm-raising intentions. My plan to sow havoc and turmoil in the skies by releasing the fallen angels from Pandemonium never stood a chance. Perhaps I should have seen my failure coming. Nothing got past Lucifer. His stringent vigil over Pandemonium prevented the sky's impending doom. He appeared before me in my time of defeat. Every pent-up emotion inside of me, excess baggage accumulated over the past 2,000 years, erupted all at once. Grief from feeling worthless, misery from being ignored, despair from everlasting rejection. Everything that had transpired was his fault. Hate me, destroy me, punish me, I begged. But Lucifer did not see fit to play my game. Instead, he accepted full responsibility for my crimes. No, it wasn't supposed to end that way. I wasn't interested in clemency. I sought to beget calamity in order to be struck down by the Supreme Primarch's own hand. Were he to forgive my transgressions, my hatred for the light over these past centuries would have been for naught. To my dismay, the punishment I desired never came. Lucifer sealed me within the gentle warmth of his core, where I succumbed to a deep sleep. I found myself in a place where time ceased to flow. It was the perfect cloister, where I had nothing but my thoughts to keep me company. Then one day, Lyria came to see me. She fought to make me see reason, drawing examples from her own life experiences. The girl spoke of grappling with personal inadequacies. She hadn't known what her purpose in life was, or even who she was. But despite those hurdles, she eventually found a place to call home. Likewise, she believed it wasn't too late for me to discover my true self. Could Lucifer and I actually come to understand one another someday? It was a tempting thought, one that caused cracks to form in my rigid facade. Perhaps I had misunderstood Lucifer all along. The stronger the light, the darker the shadow. When one is faced with such dazzling brightness, the only escape is to look away. Could it be that I was being bathed in his light all this time? The walls of my confines melted away, and I was transported to a shrine in Canaan. I could feel Lucifer's presence close by. Faint though it was, I followed his aura until I finally found him. Or at least, what was left of him. His head lay on the ground, devoid of a vessel to bear it. Despite the loss of his senses, he seemed to comprehend that someone was present.
Please, I have a message for the ears of one named Sandalphon. I leave my power and the position of Supreme Primarch to him.
Even in his dismembered state, His mind lingered on the Sky Realm. It's no wonder he irritated me so. He always did as he pleased. Consequences to others be damned. The skies! All you ever talk about is this worthless realm! I went off on a tirade, though I don't know how much of it got through to him, given his state. His last words took a turn toward the philosophical.
What makes the sky blue? For thousands of years, people have wondered. And even once they grasped the science, they continued to ask. It struck me. Perhaps a question is really just a wish. Wondering why, how, what to do. That eternal questioning, wishing, seems to be where evolution leads.
As he drew his final breath, he spoke not as the Supreme Primarch, but as himself.
If I could be granted one last wish, I'd like to share one more cup of coffee with you in that shaded garden.
My chest ached, and the yearning for the light returned. His already dim glow continued to fade. I felt his power, along with his wishes, being passed on to me. All I could do was stand there in a stupor. I peered out of the shrine and gazed at the expansive blue he loved so much. His calming light would forever shine across the skies, illuminating the path forward, an undying beacon to guide those who lost their way. Disaster never seems to sleep. Not long after I had inherited Lucifer's power, another crisis threatened the world. This time it was Lucilius who took offense to the gods, unleashing chaos to spit in their faces. His plan, or grand finale in his words, was to crash Pandemonium into the Crimson Horizon, thereby destroying the dimensional barrier. To make matters worse, the Astral had the gall to attach his head to Lucifer's stolen body. It fueled him with immense power in the form of 12 pitch-black wings on his back. It was my duty to uphold the Supreme Primarch's legacy and protect the realm. I teamed up with the captain and crew to stop Lucilius dead in his tracks. I had finally found friends I wanted to protect. The fate of an entire world rested on my shoulders. This mission was personal. It wasn't so much about keeping promises or seeking atonement, nor was it to fulfill my duty as the Supreme Primarch. I simply wished to safeguard those I held dear. By some miracle, I had become the light that could banish evil. Lyria kept a white plume with her, perhaps as a good luck charm, without knowing what it truly represented. The plume resonated with me, and from my back grew 12 great wings. 2 were my own, followed by 6 bestowed by the Supreme Primarch. The other Primarchs contributed the final 4, 1 from each respective owner. With the weight of everyone's faith borne upon my wings, we defeated Lucilius, the Sky Realm's greatest threat, once and for all. A saga spanning 2 millennia had at last come to an end. It wasn't until some days later, as I stood on the deck of the soaring Grand Cipher, that I would have the chance to reflect on the immediate aftermath of our duel with Lucilius. After the Astral's downfall, a dimensional rift opened and began pulling Lyria in. I remembered the wind roaring in my ears as I flew to rescue her. The next thing I knew, I awoke in a place without time. I seemed to have returned back to the garden at the research lab, or some sort of recreation of it at least. A figure walked up to me and reached out a hand. It was Lucifer. Was I dreaming? Was this merely an illusion? We sat in the serene garden, sipping coffee and waxing nostalgic about events that took place 20-odd centuries ago. I couldn't stop my thoughts from spilling out. There were so many things to apologize for, so much gratitude to be expressed. And that's not to mention the myriad questions I felt compelled to ask. I reiterated my commitment to act as the new Supreme Primarch. And before long, the moment of our parting had arrived. In the past, I always had to watch him leave. But now, it was his turn to see me off. I had to be strong, for his sake. It was time to bid farewell to the eternal light of my adoration. I put forth my best smile. Till next time. The Grand Cipher, its crew, and the endless blue skies. I never would have imagined myself posing for a painting against such a backdrop. But there I was, on the docks of Folka, standing beside my fellow models, Lyria, Vern, Id, and the captain. How did I get roped into this, you might be asking? Well, I can assure you I didn't volunteer. You see, it began a few days prior while I was perusing the wares of the Knick-Knack Shack. There, slightly hidden in the back, a painting had caught my eye. What drew my attention to the piece wasn't the scenic rendition of Folka, but rather the hue that stained the sky. It looked distorted. I felt compelled to ask the creator about their intentions. With Sierra Carte acting as an intermediary, the artist agreed to field my questions. In exchange, I and a select few would have to pose for a new piece. According to Id, the latest of the crew's allies, modeling was well within the bounds of a handyman's duties. But, returning to the topic at hand, once the portrait session concluded, I asked her to elaborate on the meaning behind her choice of colors.
Well, I'm not sure if I can explain it without sounding insane. Every time I look at the skies these days, it sort of feels blue? Like in the figurative sense, I mean.
In other words, she saw deterioration in the sky's health.
I don't know. I'm probably the only one who sees it that way. Maybe it's all in my head, but something doesn't sit right with me.
Such sharp perception. Perhaps this is what sky dwellers call artists' intuition. If the health of the sky is in actual decline, an examination of the wind element may help us locate any symptoms. Even the tiniest, most imperceptible change can balloon to catastrophic proportions. At worst, it could lead to the complete destabilization of the tetra elements. To ignore warning signs, no matter how trifling, was a recipe for disaster.
Wind element. Wind element. Oh, Furican might know something. Let me ask.
Lyria closed her eyes and beseeched the primal to appear. We waited, to no avail.
Huh? That's weird. Furican isn't responding to me.
According to Lyria, she'd spoken to the primal as little as a few days ago. Given the primal's newfound silence, it did seem as if something was wrong.
I don't like where this is going. I think this calls for a trip to the old mines.
The captain nodded in agreement.
As far as I'm aware, Tempeal's recovery has been trouble-free. Let's hope this is just a fluke.
The only way to know for certain was to see it for ourselves. We quickly boarded the Grand Cipher and departed for Tempeal to hunt for clues. Peace had barely returned to Zega Grande Skydom, and now chaos was already brewing once more. The knots in my stomach grew tighter by the minute.
I'm not seeing anything out of the ordinary, to be honest with you.
The self-proclaimed handyman known as Roland had joined our investigation of Halewind Altar. Astral though he may be, he was a close ally of the crew. As a long-time denizen of Zega Grande, his knowledge of the Skydom was second to none. To think there existed an Astral who had laid his life on the line for the good of the realm. It was difficult to reconcile Roland's personality with my own biases, especially having witnessed Lucilius's sinister deeds.
Wait, there's something close by.
Allow me to amplify your energy, Lyria. Now, can you try calling Furikin again?
Sure. Here goes.
Once again, the primal of vitality failed to appear. It's becoming clear that the wind element is acting abnormally. It's more pronounced here than in Folka. Ever since the 4 Primarchs relinquished their oversight of the Tetra elements to nature, I've been able to utilize my Supreme Primarch powers to feel elemental currents. Yet I also sensed a faint foreign dissonance, one which was different from the irregularity in the wind element. Whatever it was, it seemed to be flowing towards a singular point elsewhere in the Skydom.
Hang on, I finally got through to Furikin. But something's not right.
A chill washed over my body, though it came and went in a flash. Judging from the look of panic on Lyria's face, the situation had taken a turn for the worse.
I was hoping I was wrong, but this aura can only mean one thing.
Oh no, not this icky pressure again. I can't believe it's back!
That can't be. I thought we...
Here it comes!
A turbulent gale nearly launched us off our feet. Squinting through the howling wind, I saw the unmistakable silhouette of a primal beast rearing up on its hind legs. It appeared force was our only option. You give us no choice. We shall make you see reason.
Angraminyu still pulling Furikin by the reins.
I'm so sorry, Furikin. Even after we beat Angra...
Here it comes!
Focus on evasion.
Everyone, come to me! Ward of Light, come forth!
Great job, Lyria! Furikin is changing its form. It may have new tricks up its sleeve. Be ready for anything!
Finally, it shows its true face. Very well. Then I won't hold back either. Get moving! By these
Listen to him,
chromatic
or else
rings.
we're setting ducks!
One more push and be still!
Okay, Lyria. Your turn.
Got it! I'm sorry for what you had to suffer through, Furikin, but everything's all right now.
Lyria's calming words soothed the primal. Now that Furikin was freed from its shackles, it dissipated quietly into the air, as did the projection of Angraminyu. We could only hope that we had seen the last of Furikin's fitful outbursts.
Lilith, you still haven't loosened your grip on this Skydom, have you?
The infamous Angraminyu was not what I had expected. Hearing about it was one thing. Being in its unsettling presence was something else entirely.
I still don't get it, though. Why'd old Gusty wait until now to start kicking up a storm? I mean, Furican could have caused some serious damage already if it really wanted to.
I have my guesses. You see, during my old research days, we Astrals delved into the concept of emotional intelligence.
The primal beasts of Zega Grande formed pacts with the islands to serve as their guardians. It had been Roland who convinced the masses to worship these primals as primeval gods. Instilled with the people's faith, the primal's influence over the environment expanded significantly. Obvious treachery was responsible for Tempeal's misfortunes, resulting in a loss of faith in Furican. As that confidence waned, it was only a matter of time before the primal beast went berserk.
With that being said, this change is too rapid. Furican is consuming too much power.
Having lived in Zega Grande for so long, Roland knew an irregularity when he saw one. All we could posit for certain was that the stagnating faith in Furican was weakening the wind element. Was it simply a case of lost confidence? I had a nagging suspicion there was more to the puzzle.
So if we don't restore that faith, things won't go back to the way they were.
Yes, that is the natural conclusion. I'm afraid swaying hearts will be easier said than done considering the damage Furican has caused. But as they say, time heals all wounds.
Such optimism. Though his reasoning had merit, I did not believe we could leave fate in the hands of an old adage alone. May I interject?
What's wrong? You sound kinda serious.
As far as Zega Grande is concerned, Furican is the next closest thing to the wind element itself. If Furican's power drops, the wind element would consequently weaken. I needed to hammer home just how pressing this issue was. We find ourselves in a predicament where Zega Grande's islands are destined to fall out of the sky.
Wait, what?
You'd better start talking.
Gladly. However, the problem at hand requires a brief history lesson. And so, I recounted how the islands of Fanta Grande nearly fell into the Crimson Horizon. All because I had disrupted the equilibrium of the Tetra elements. Fire, water, earth, and wind. Island buoyancy is predicated on the delicate balance between those four. I was convinced this loss of buoyancy had made its way to Zega Grande, though I couldn't place the origin of the dissonance I felt. It was too faint and hard to trace, like trying to detect a grain of sand in the sea. The process could take as long as a century or as little as a year. Either way, it had begun. The clock was ticking.
A collapse of the balance between elements. Interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
So just because the Islanders don't believe in Furican anymore, the wind is weakening and someday the island will drop out of the sky?
More or less.
I can't sense the elements at all. How are we to rectify something we can't detect?
Maintaining the balance was paramount. A single loose thread could cause everything to rip at the seams. Restoring faith in the primal beasts, who represent their respective elements, should, in theory, stabilize the equilibrium. I presented my idea to Roland, and he agreed.
You make a sound point. Right then. Leave it to Mr. Fix-It. My experience with mending relationships shall not go to waste. I'll have a talk with everyone in Einstedo.
Roland had the trust of the townspeople, so the wind element was in capable hands. That left 3 elements unaccounted for.
Well, guess it's up to us to handle the rest. It'll be fun taking another tour of Zega Grande.
It always seems like we're heaping more and more troubles on your plate. I hope you don't mind.
Not at all. We'll make you proud.
You know what to do, Id. Let's show everyone what happens when Team Handyman steps up to the plate.
I'm on it.
With a strategy in place, we set off for the next island. A daunting task rested on our shoulders. We needed to rebuild the people's trust and faith. But I believed in the potential of Sky Dwellers, and I was finally a light who could guide them
Come to view the requests?
Our homes, our livelihoods, it's all gone. Gone!
We paid a visit to an old monastery on Lotanya Island. Rather than a warm welcome, we were greeted by a man stricken with grief. Try as I might, my questioning was met only with lament.
It is a pleasure to see you all again. Though I am loath to admit we cannot offer much in the way of hospitality at the moment.
Historiath, a woman who had played a vital role in bringing down Angra Mainyu, bowed to us with solemn grace.
You chose an inopportune time to visit. A section of permasnow inconceivably thawed, resulting in horrific flooding. We have our hands full with the evacuation efforts.
That explained the flock of distraught individuals milling about. Historiath and her attendants from Milo's monastery had done a remarkable job preventing casualties. A dramatic climate shift is certainly to blame for the unexpected thaw. However, the root cause was surely tied to a deviation of the water element. But there were more important things to worry about. For now, I brushed it aside in favor of helping the islanders.
This news doesn't appear to faze you. Is there perhaps something I should know?
I explained how faith in the primeval gods was connected to the state of the elements. The overseer closed her eyes, as if weighing the options available to her.
Does this mean we'll have to fight Managarmer?
That is ultimately not up to me. I would rather use force as a last resort, even though it seemed inevitable. Furikin's frenzied outburst could have been the exception, but perhaps that was just wishful thinking. These people were reaching their breaking points. To assault a god, a being meant to be revered, seemed counterproductive considering the state of morale.
Given that our esteemed primeval god governs sequestration, resealing it behind the doors of Tradam's sanctum may return some semblance of faith.
That could, in a manner of speaking, reset the island to its original state. A primeval god locked behind a door would elevate the divine being's mystique, thereby inspiring reverence amongst its worshippers. It was worth a try. Couldn't be any worse than allowing the climate shift to ravage the island.
O primeval god of Belfrost's dominion, by your grace, shut the gate of seclusion!
The sanctum doors shuddered and drew to a close. As they clicked shut, a wolf-like howl echoed from within the inner chambers. The evacuees raised their heads, soaking in the sonorous timbre with sighs of relief. To my surprise, the snowfall grew slightly heavier. I hadn't expected such a quick turnaround.
It seems Managarmer's divinity thrives when placed in seclusion.
The clouds over Lotanya grew thicker and banished the sun's rays from its domain. Soon, the sacred mountain was back in the loving embrace of ice and frost. If the brutal cold is what its tenants cried out for, then who was I to judge?
Whenever I need inspiration to formulate a harebrained scheme, I just plunk myself down in front of this empty litter box and the ideas start flowing.
Zothba chuckled as we stared out at the ruins of Valian. The crew hid in the shade of a monolithic rock formation to avoid melting in the mid-afternoon sun. Even so, the heat was palpable to my more mortal companions.
Now I know what a fried egg feels like.
This island, like the previous two we'd come from, showed signs of irregularity. Desertification was accelerating, possibly spurred by an erratic earth element. I sensed the same lingering dissonance here, yet failed again to identify it. How irritating.
While we're holed up here trying to beat the heat, Let me tell you a tale from Dolly's history.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Not so fast, Buster. What's this info gonna cost us?
Ha! Spoken like a true info broker. Oh, they grow up so fast. Anyway, we're pals now, aren't we? Not everything I do has an ulterior motive, you know.
I think that was the first time I'd seen Zothpa smile since our introductions. He went on to explain that this entire region was occupied by an immense structure known as Holy City Valian, otherwise known as the primal beast Excavalion, and it was home to many a Sky Dweller. They were protected by the primal's power of fortification, and some say even Astrals walked among them. Excavalion blessed the desert, harsh as it was. Every day the islanders gathered on a hill beneath the stars to offer up their prayers. It was hard to imagine this now barren land once teemed with activity.
Those prayers must have been what fueled that emotion mumbo-jumbo Roland was going on about. Excavalion stored up quite a bit of goodwill back in the day.
That changed when Roland sealed away Excavalion during the war, causing the islanders to seek prosperity elsewhere. They uprooted their families and took their faith in Excavalion with them. The final nail in the coffin was hammered in by the Church of Avia 15 years ago, when the Dali catastrophe wiped out any remaining souls. Even if such a disaster hadn't transpired, faith in Excavalion had hit its peak nearly 500 years earlier. How would it be possible to replicate those heights once more? Let's see what we have to work with. For one, there was sand. Lots of sand. As far as the eye could see. It was going to take a monumental, maybe even asinine, idea to repopulate this desolate island.
Huh. What? You think I sit behind a big desk just to stroke my ego? Point your peepers over there. Tell me if you spot the seeds of a burgeoning oasis.
I squinted at the dune Zothpa was pointing to. A figure crested its peak, looking like a tree growing out of the sand. Another one sprouted, and then another, and soon an entire forest had emerged from the beige sea.
Ladies and gentlemen, who's got what it takes to be a millionaire? There's treasure everywhere you look, but only the quickest get stinking rich. Finders keepers, losers weepers. Are you ready? Get set, go!
On the spunky Harvin's signal, the crowd dispersed in all directions as if their lives depended on it.
We already picked the place clean of the good stuff, but they don't have to know that. Nothing mobilizes people better than get-rich-quick schemes. Besides, there's no rule against converting greed into faith, right?
So this was the man's grand design, a treasure-hunting venture. If word of riches reached gullible ears, a base of operations could easily grow into a true village.
Our cut is 30%. Don't worry. We already hammered out a deal with Seed Hollow. Pretty good side hustle, if you ask me.
Regardless of wealth's powerful allure, success was not guaranteed, nor would it come on such short notice. Still, it was a plan at least. We would have to wait until enough people settled on Dali before determining the next step.
Yo, boss, I did it! My sales numbers are through the roof! That means I got that bonus on lockdown, right? Right?
Since when have I ever gone back on my word? Don't go spending it all in one place. And be sure to thank the primeval god. You hear?
I love ya, Excavalion! I'll buy a round in your honor.
Sometimes to get results, one needs to be unconventional, especially if it speeds the process along. This gambit just may prove to be more successful than anticipated. Zothpa the information broker. He could give the Archangel of Cunning a run for his money. I did not think it possible to exceed Dali's heat until I arrived on Phantom. Given that the fire element influences Fright Flame Altar, I should have known better. My throat burned with every spoken word. Even here, the fire element is fraying. The dissonance was present on this island too, its true identity still elusive as ever.
When I was trapped in Vulcan Bola's crystal, I could almost make out its intentions. It wasn't always the primal beast of dread. It was originally supposed to bring hope to people.
Lyria had been shown an ancient memory, one in which Vulcan Bola originally presided over Dali and took shape based on the thoughts harbored by its residents. It acted as a vessel for people's emotions. Put differently, Vulcan Bola was a primal that materialized from the collective unconsciousness of its worshippers.
It was supposed to gather everyone's hope, but...
She couldn't bring herself to finish her thought. But her frown and downcast eyes said all that needed to be said. When those former dwellers of Dali were confronted with the unknown, they had reacted not with hope, but with dread. Fear is a natural part of life. It allows a creature to avoid danger and survive to the next day. Mortals are generally rational beings, but it can be hard not to succumb to raw instinct. Whatever objective the Astrals aspired to achieve, it was incompatible with the wishes of Skydwellers. On account of the endless dread harbored within its body, Vulcan Bola gradually transformed into the earth-scorching being it is today.
The Astrals saw that things weren't going well. After Vulcan Bola damaged part of the island, they closed it off. Now it's called Fondom.
Without the guardianship of a primal beast, Dali's lands began to wither, while the volcanic domain of Fondom languished in neglect. As long as Vulcan Bola maintained its power of dread, this exiled land would never see change. No one could be expected to live a life of constant fear. We would be hard-pressed to find any person sane enough to dwell in what I can only describe as a blistering death trap.
So you got a plan for fixing up the fire element, right? Because I do not want to fall out of the sky.
Yes, if the current situation were left to fester, then the sky would be well on its way to collapse. Though who would put their faith in dread? We were at an impasse.
Oh, there you are. Goodness, you folks sure don't miss your cardio. I'm glad I found you.
Fix it, dude! What are you doing here?
As Roland jogged over to us, robes flapping, I realized he had two unfamiliar faces in tow.
Zothpa told me I'd find you here. I'm happy to announce that we're all set in Folka.
Roland told us the whole story, and we want to do our part to save these skies.
You've done so much for us, and we've repaid so little of your kindness. As representatives of Seed Hollow, we're here to offer our full assistance.
Roland had held a forum with the peoples of Folka and Seed Hollow. After much deliberation, they decided to establish an observatory on Fondom.
By exposing people to the real Vulcan Bola, I think its dreadful reputation, forgive the pun, will gradually change for the better.
In addition to monitoring the primal, the observatory would become the destination for regular pilgrimages. The prayers offered would, hopefully, rehabilitate Vulcan Bola's image over time.
We were humbled by your efforts to protect our homes, so we knew we had to step it up too.
Our resources are your resources. Whatever happens, rest assured our forces will defend the citizens with their lives.
It was evident that the resolve of these Sky Dwellers was strong, thanks in no small part to the Captain's inspiration. These mortals didn't need my meddling. The future of Zeka Grande was in good hands.
Unfortunately, I have another bit of news to share. In fact, I was hoping I could count on your help for just a bit longer.
Roland's smile vanished, and a steely gaze took its place.
A scouting team from Seed Hollow filed several reports about a strange phenomenon they experienced while investigating the Pillar of Vayoi. They claimed to have heard a voice, but not just any voice.
My body suddenly went numb with apprehension. It was as if I had returned to the research lab, reliving the moment when I heard Lucilius call me a spare.
It was Lilith's.
No one moved. No one dared to breathe. If I hadn't known better, I would have sworn time itself had stopped.
That's impossible. She can't be alive. Not after what we...
The Astral named Lilith should be long at the bottom of the skies, or so I was told. How could she have survived? We fly, now. The Grand Cipher lifted off with a complement of stupefied passengers. As we pulled away from Fondom's blood-red skies, the clouds seemed to part into a sneering grin. We raced to the top of the tower as fast as our legs could carry us, though none of us heard even a whisper of Lilith's voice. It was entirely possible, perhaps even preferable, that the scouting team had merely imagined the voice. Our vigilant eyes spotted nothing out of the ordinary, at least not in the physical sense, but something was there. I could feel it. It finally dawned on me. The trickles of dissonance I had felt on each of the 4 islands we visited were congregating at this location.
Did you sense something, Sandalphon?
As a matter of fact, I noticed a faint disturbance on the other islands, as if something somewhere was siphoning off energy.
That doesn't sound good.
According to Roland and the captain, the phenomenon I described was strikingly similar to the way Lilith raised Vayoi. Vayoi was an amalgamation of debris and primal crystals absorbed from across Sega Grande. Why was history repeating itself?
Now that you mention it, I think I sense Angra Mainyu. Its projected body disappeared when Lilith fused with it, but maybe its real one is still out there.
You mean to suggest we defeated a mere spare of Angra Mainyu?
A mere spare. Even if it wasn't the Primal's true form, I could not believe Lilith would risk such a fusion. Taking in a primal core was no simple matter, and in the worst cases, it meant a permanent transfiguration, astral or not. However, Lilith had reverted to her original form after the battle, lending further credence to the fact that the crew had only fought a duplicate.
Let's assume that Angra Mainyu's real body survived without a scratch. It won't take action without commands. Someone must be pulling its strings, ordering it to absorb primal crystals. But there's only one person who would want that.
Right on cue, a spine-chilling voice cut through the very air itself.
Place the crystals upon Vayoi's altar. Open the gate beyond the stars.
That was Mother.
And yet, the Dark Prophetess was nowhere to be found. With her disembodied voice still ringing in our ears, we drew our weapons, ready to battle with an enemy we couldn't see.
Angra Mainyu, O door to worlds beyond, claim this offering.
Her voice is coming from another dimension. So she is alive!
A rematch with an Astral thought dead was the farthest thing from anyone's mind.
Id, I know this must be painful for you, but we must cross into the alternate dimension and destroy Lilith and Angra Mainyu once and for all.
I know. Don't worry about me.
You make it sound like opening a dimensional gate is as easy as turning a doorknob.
My good dragon, don't you remember this little beauty?
Roland proudly held up a transceiver. He boasted that it was capable of tracing where the energy signature was at its strongest. And Angra Mainyu would be lurking at the convergence point of the streams of dissonance. As soon as Roland flipped a switch on the transceiver, the sword of Eos in the captain's hand began to emit a radiant glow.
After you, Captain!
Roger that! The captain followed the signal, and with a weighty swing of their sword, a crack appeared in the air above the ground. The cut, however, was still too shallow. Allow me. I focused the power of the Primarchs into the crack etched by the captain. With a shrill crash, the gate to another dimension shattered open.
Fell the interlopers. Guide them to oblivion.
Lilith's voice rang crystal clear from within the rift. She was waiting on the other side of the threshold.
Follow me!
Roland took charge and leapt into the gaping fissure. We were right behind him. Come hell or high water, we were putting an end to this Astral's incessant machinations.
I hear Lilith, but she's nowhere to be found.
We can leave her be for now. Focus on the colossal primal in front of us. Good choice. Keep up. No escape. There's no way out. Swarm! Shogus! Thunder! Stop hiding! No! I take you!
Now I see what this is all about. Lilith left behind a reverberation hex.
What the hell does that mean?
It means this poor beast is still bound to follow its master's orders. No, she's long gone.
Our lifesaver!
You okay? My power grows.
On the double!
Catch! Way ahead of me. Rest in peace.
Farewell, Lilith. It's finally over.
How about a relaxing cup of coffee? Once we had pacified Angra Mainyu, Roland began the rites to seal it away.
You're free now, Angra Mainyu. You won't be used for evil anymore. You can finally sleep peacefully.
It wasn't quite a eulogy, but hopefully it was enough of a goodbye. As the rift drew to a close, Angra Mainyu pulsed with light, a final sigh of relief as it was released from its torment.
As I'm sure you've all surmised, Lilith was never here to begin with. We were listening to an echo that she left behind using magic.
Then she's really gone. That's some comfort, at least.
I'm sorry, Id.
Sleep well, Angra Mainyu. May you never be exploited for nefarious acts ever again.
Well, I'm glad we put that matter to rest. Now that Voyoi has lost its power source, I dare say it'll crumble and fall to the bottom of the skies.
It would not be in the Sky Realm's best interest to allow this massive structure to crash into the Crimson Horizon. I envisioned what would happen if Pandemonium or Etemenanki crashed into the Crimson Horizon. All scenarios resulted in cataclysmic repercussions.
Not to worry. Just as Voyoi was assembled from assorted items across Sega Grande, so too should it dissolve into myriad vestiges before making a descent. Though I do feel sorry for the otherworlders residing in the Crimson Horizon. They won't be too thrilled when our trash rains down on them.
That would require an apology. Perhaps I should bring confections when the opportunity availed itself. That is, assuming the denizens of the otherworld were willing to sit down over a cup of coffee. As opposed to tearing me to shreds, of course.
Is your stomach growling?
Hello there.
In the wake of our element-stabilizing endeavors, I flew high into Zega Grande's atmosphere to better evaluate the elemental health of the skydom. Recovery was slow, but it was progressing in the right direction. If skydwellers and primal beasts could return to living in harmony with one another, the elements should no doubt re-establish equilibrium. I visited the islands again to see how the people were faring. Blessed by the warm sun, smiles were abloom in the townships of the Einstedo archipelago. Meanwhile, the monks of Melos were still busy mopping up the flood that swept through the ravines of Lotania. A contingent of workers led by the family Zothba had unearthed a fair section of Dali's ruins. Several small encampments had already sprung up to capitalize on potential profits. Flights to Fondom from Folca and Seed Hollow had begun service. Construction on the observatory was coming along nicely as well. Come laughter, tears, or pain, skydwellers persevere. They learn to grow and evolve. They possess unlimited potential to overcome any manner of hardship that stands in their way. I witnessed that firsthand from my travels with the captain and crew. As the Supreme Primarch, it was my duty to watch over the people from high above. But maybe I was destined for another purpose. Skydwellers are strong. A time will come when they no longer need the aid of archangels, or any other such being. And as we fade in importance, we will be forgotten. Did he continue to advance Skydweller evolution, knowing full well it may lead to the end of his purpose? The ability to forget is a double-edged sword. The fear of being forgotten by someone important to you is unimaginably terrifying. When the primals of Zega Grande no longer had a role to play, they began to disappear from everyone's lives. What if these primals had influenced the elements in a bid to affirm their own existence? A final, desperate cry to the world, announcing they were still here. Before me, the sky stretched out under a blinding sun, blue as far as the eye could see. The world's cruelty wrenched my heart. Lucifer once wondered what makes the sky blue. I guess I have a question of my own for the skies. Would mortals and primals ever stop fighting? Could we ever live in harmony? Oh? Am I a bit early? The portrait we posed for on the docks of Folca was complete, so I had plans to meet the others at the church to collect it. However, its humble halls were empty. It would seem my fellow crewmates were comfortable with being fashionably late. Don't get the wrong idea. I have absolutely no interest in vanity. I was, however, curious which colors the artist had selected to paint the sky. Once I'd confirmed this detail, I would be on my way. But it was quiet in the church, somber, you could say. Coffee would go well with this atmosphere. What I wouldn't give for just one cup, though I wasn't sure we could afford the detour for such a simple luxury. They're late. I'd grown used to waiting on mortals. There was nothing to do except figure out the best way to pass the time. I could reanalyze our previous battle with Angra Mainyu, or I could also...
Sleepyhead!
Was someone calling me?
Rise and shine, sleepyhead.
I was still groggy coming out of my accidental nap, but my ears were in working order. A cacophony of voices made sure of that.
Heard you're a coffee fiend, so I brought you my famous Zothba blend. Stuff will knock your socks off.
You failed to mention it was brewed with natural water melted from the purest snow of Lotania. I dare you to find a fresher source.
Sandalphon, my boy, how do you feel about sponge cake?
Try some of Seed Hollow's finest flower wine. Go on, take a swig straight from the bottle.
All right. Let the poor guy get his bearings, everyone. He did just wake up.
Somebody's popular.
What had I done to deserve this? Think, Sandalphon. First you came to the church to receive a painting, and then...
You had no idea so many people wanted to come thank you, right? No wonder you're surprised.
I did not think I had done anything to warrant such an outpouring of gratitude. The children of man fuss over everything.
Look at it this way. If it weren't for you, we never would have noticed all the weirdness in the skies. You rock, dude!
As I fumbled for an excuse to escape the throng of well-wishers, Sierra Carte entered the church.
My goodness. We have ourselves quite the turnout here.
Turnout? What was this, a party?
And now, for the moment you've been waiting for. Voila!
The merchant presented me with a board wrapped in cloth. I gingerly removed it, only to be met with the shock of a lifetime. Lucifer? No. I felt as if my eyes were betraying me.
That wasn't exactly the reaction I was expecting.
Lyria and Vern peered over my shoulder.
Wow, you look so handsome, Sandalphon.
My identity as the Supreme Primarch had never been revealed to the artist, yet her intuitive eye still captured my hidden essence.
If you want, I could arrange for a replacement. No questions asked. Customer satisfaction is my #1 priority.
No, that won't be necessary. I'll take it. The pure arrogance of mistaking myself for Lucifer. I must have been drowsier than I let on. Yet somehow, it felt right. Regardless, I still had one outstanding issue with the portrait. Where would I hang it up?